Alright, so here is some footage of my burning mulch experiments. I'm standing in my driveway behind a little tough shed I've got here, and there's a little bit of a slope up to some pine trees, and underneath these pine trees is mulch, which is just chipped pine trees. Basically, I used to have more pine trees, and several of them died, and so I had them taken down and mulched. And as you can see over here, I have dug out mostly the surface, which is the drier, and some from underneath a little bit. It's also very dry, a little more decomposed. It's all very dry. And then over here, back where I was standing, underneath this pine tree, I have a buildup of needles. And you can see here where I kind of just scraped away. They're maybe an inch thick at the most. We're going to see how some of that burns as well. So, out back here, you can see I've got my watering can and my fire extinguisher set up. And the floor here is covered with, well, it's Melaleuca. It's related to the eucalyptus. It burns really well, but it's laying on the ground in a very thin covering. And then here I have the mulch, chipped wood, and some bigger sticks. I'm going to see how well this stuff burns. This is, as you can see, yeah, it's about 3.5, 4 inches deep. Here next to it I've got a pile of pine needles that I scraped from underneath that tree. And I'm going to use a plasma torch lighter to ignite these things. Now let's see how well the chipped wood mulch burns. So as you can see, it does burn, and it stays lit. The thing that's actually producing a big flame on the top there is a stick. The flame from the mulch is fairly low. And as I had seen in a number of videos, this chipped wood mulch really burns fairly low and slow. There's a breeze here today, by the way, that's really helping. So you can see right in there, that breeze is blasting right into that, causing a lot of extra heat, and it's just not spreading very quickly. It's just kind of crawling along there. Well, that's a good 4 or 5 inches of chipped wood mulch. Now, if that were more flammable, if that were a lighter, fluffier material, that could be a merry blaze. Let me just stand back here a little bit so you can kind of see. It's really progressing very slowly. And it's not penetrating much. It's kind of blowing along the top. I half suspect it would have gone out if there were no wind. But of course, you don't ever want to count on that. So while we let that burn for a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and set this pile of pine needles alight. And I believe they will burn better. Although I would not be surprised if they don't, because they pack tighter. Again, you can see I got like 6 inches, and I mean that pine needles are actually not burning as well as the wood chips, but even the wood chips are less than, well, it's maybe a 10-inch flame at the parts where it's licking up the highest, and that's with 6 inches of fuel underneath it being blown by the wind. Pine needles have gone out. Interesting, very interesting to me. Let's light a stick on fire in here with some pine needles under it. Oh, there we go. See what kind of a response. I just don't seem to be able to get those guys to stay lit. There we go. Something's happening. Now over here we're getting a heck of a bed of coals, but you can see already that around the edges is where it's advancing very slowly. During all this time it has spread maybe 6 inches. It's very happy to spread downwind as well. Again, the pine needles are just not burning as well. And you know, from camping experience, that just doesn't surprise me. You need kind of a fluffy stack of pine needles, and then they go like rocket fuel. But condensed, packed pine needles just don't burn so good. Certainly not any better than the wood chip mulch. One thing I want to point out here is that these wood chips, I'm going to stir this up a little bit. See, there's plenty of combustible material underneath there, and it's hot now. So anything that comes along, like a falling branch or what have you, that should stir this up is going to create a hot spot. But I'm just not that worried about my mulch setting the rest of my property on fire. And again, you know, this depends largely, when you're thinking about it, on your definition of mulch. When I talk about mulch, it's any ground covering that keeps the weeds down and the moisture in. So the wood chip stuff qualifies as mulch. The wood chips don't want to burn very well. Still, I think I'm going to put it all out now. I think we've learned all we can from this. Just to show you here, I got plenty of space around it, and I have extinguishers and so forth right there. And let's just see how hard it is to extinguish with plain old water. That's the end of that one. And of course, we know that embers can continue to live under this. So we will stir it up, drag it out, spread it out, and douse it again until there is no steam or smoke. And I will pour a whole 2 gallons over this. And dump a bunch uphill so it soaks through and runs under. And that's our